Hey, welcome back. Oh, today we are on a subject that I know and love, the Revolutionary War period. One of the best ways to know about it is through some of the fine artists who have captured scenes from that period of history. Today, we have an opportunity to meet one of those incredible artists. My name is Vin DeQuino. His name is John Wright. Hey, John, I went to a program, Mount Vernon, and there was this guy in this corner who absolutely floored me. I saw some of your artwork. It's just amazing. You have learned how to capture that period of history for us. Tell me a little bit about who John Wright is and how you came about following this passion.
Well, thank you, Lenny. I was always artistic. In 1975, I was graduating Parsons School of Design to be an illustrator. Wow. The year before the bicentennial. Wow. As an illustrator,
good timing,
I figure there are no photographs of the Revolutionary War, so someone's going to get paid to do illustrations of it. And that's where I got started. I got involved with an organization called the Brigade of the American Revolution, through which I learned, well, so much about the revolution. And of course, I developed my art skills, and the two of them grew together. Ultimately, the skills came out that I had a knowledge base and the capability to work with people, so I became a valuable person to work at and run historic sites. And all of these have been melded together to create a living for me.
Wow. So you go to various organizations, most of them nonprofits, and you go there and you create illustrations for them, and you help to bring to life moments in history.
Well, more than that, actually, I am also a reenactor. I am actually dressed in authentic clothing and materials of the time period, and I put on programming at these historic sites or for schools and retired communities and Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. You know, some of them are hands-on activities, but in particular, the artwork, yes. And it's as detailed as I can get it to be through the research that I do or the research that the client gives you, because we are creating an impression that we hope our viewers are going to come away with, so they have a better understanding of.
They say, John, bring this to life. And boy, you do.
Yeah.
You really do. In fact, we happen to have some photos of some of your work. And this, what is this right here? I have, this is a fine example of your work. That isn't, but that is. Let's talk about that first.
Sure thing. This is a piece that I have done for the national parks. It's for their consideration to use as an exhibit piece.
So it's sort of a bird's eye view?
Exactly. And in particular, I'm known for doing bird's eye views of various sites. This was, and still is, because this is pretty much as you would see it if you go to Rome, New York today.
I was just going to say Fort Stanwix. I grew up in Utica, New York.
Did you?
I went to Fort Stanwix.
We bought a dog, not to make a comparison, but we bought a dog in Utica when
there
I was
you
a
go.
kid, back when I had hair.
I used to ride my bicycle from Utica to Rome to go to two places. One was Griffith Air Force Base.
Of course. You love watching planes.
Yeah, and the other was the what do you call it? Where they keep the fish. The
hatchery.
The hatchery.
Yeah.
I was going to say the foundry, and I know it wasn't foundry. No, the hatchery. Oh man, we used to go there, and we used to fish the stream that came from the hatchery. They allowed you to get the escapees, and we used to get trout that were like amazing. And then we'd have to take them by a bicycle all the way back to Utica, which is about 15 or 20 miles.
I
Those were the
always
days.
return the trout, 'cause I am an avid fly fisherman, but I put them back.
We probably ended up doing that most of the time too, because it was just too much to take.
Yeah, those are big, heavy
flopping
fish.
on their way.
But
Rome,
with
Fort Stanwix. So a big battle occurred in Fort Stanwix.
the siege, it was
Yeah.
what, 21, 23 days.
Wow.
If you've ever seen the movie Drums Along the
Mohawk.
Mohawk,
Yeah, sure.
it's loosely
You can't grow up in
based on-
Utica and not see Drums Along the Mohawk.
it's
That's
loosely
the Mohawk
based
Valley.
on Fort Stanwix. In
Yeah.
the movie, it's not that, but that's basically the history there.
That really is an important thing that you do, and it helps us to see. Now here it is. How do you get to do that? I mean, it doesn't exist that same way anymore.
You go to the original plans. You go to original artwork.
Wow.
Sometimes I can. Well, I've not done it yet, but I imagine today's with these drones, you can send somebody up to take a photograph.
You have to be the drone of yesterday.
Yeah, I guess that's a good way of putting it. It depends upon the job. Sometimes the job is, you illustrate exactly what's there already.
Wow.
And then you add what is no longer there. And in some instances, we'll show you a piece of art later in the show that doesn't exist at all.
Yeah, and you can't cheat. You don't have photographs from the 1700s.
Yeah, but the client gives you a map from the 1850s. You just have little squares, and, to show you where on the map these buildings were, and then you have to.
That's what we had to do for Sybil. We had to get the maps.
That's right.
And figure out where these roads were, because the roads of today are not the roads of yesterday. It was a whole different world then.
Yeah, I'm kind of making that point right now because, in fact, I'm just finishing off a PowerPoint presentation about the contribution that children made to the revolution. And children and teenagers.
Yes,
so obviously Sybil is...
one of the things I argue about is having Sybil called a child, because Sybil was 16 when she wrote.
Right.
Her mother was 14 when she married and 15 when she had Sybil. Well, so kids
was typical.
were a lot younger then.
That's it. Or maturity came much earlier.
Much sooner,
16
and
was
so
considered,
did death, unfortunately.
Well, that's true. 16 was considered mature for a male.
So
at
what
the
is
time.
this? Trenton.
This is Washington's Battle of Trenton, done for the Old Barracks Museum in Trenton, New Jersey.
Wow.
They use it as part of their interpretation. They also do have it in their gift shop as a poster.
Yep.
And I understand it's in publication also, but it shows the movements of the Hessian forces and Washington's forces.
So great for history to give us a sense of what actually happened.
And of course, it is what the village of Trenton looked like then in 1776.
Has it changed at all?
It just, they put the State House in there.
There you go.
So,
wow.
And this is
what they looked like.
That's right. I guess that's, depending on your point of view, the bad guy. I do illustrations for publications and museums and the likes.
And that's a lot of history. People don't realize the homework that you have to do.
Yes.
To paint something like that. I know when I was doing the Sybil book, they have no idea how many hours and hours and hours I had to put in.
Well, for this one in particular, it's the 10th Regiment, a British regiment, and you got to get the facings. In this case, it's yellow, right? And then there's lace around every buttonhole.
Wow.
Each regiment had their own lace, distinctive, that if you knew what you were looking at, you could tell by just looking at the lace, this belongs to the 23rd, this belongs to the 42nd, this belongs to the 10th. And you have to get that right.
So that means you went to one or two museums
or they give, I have a substantial library on this too, because the 18th century is my period of expertise.
Wow.
in all history is my bread and butter.
Yeah.
But especially
In
the 18th
particular,
century.
yeah.
And,
Now, what is this? This is,
the fort at number 4, this was one of the earliest English settlements in New Hampshire,
wow.
along the Connecticut River. And this is a reconstructed fort. It looks like this now. Literally, I was able to do this from an aerial photograph.
Oh, wow.
But adding making the context of
yes.
cattle grazing
Back in the
around
day,
and
yep.
people in canoes on the Connecticut River and the lakes like that, and it's
what it was.
that's exactly
Yeah.
and again
Yeah.
they keep
Yeah.
this was a heck of a job.
Oh man, I can see it right there.
I was telling you about recreating a place that no longer exists.
Wow.
This was a community of free people of color who lived in Bridgeport, Connecticut, between the 1820s to roughly the 1850s. It was part of a project to restore 2 of these buildings that still exist, that were property of 2 women. And essentially, the buildings are down to their foundations and some framing.
Yeah.
They're
Not too
on,
much left.
They're on the 11 most needed to be restored list in the United States for historic buildings. And they just got a grant to do that. This project was part
People
of them
don't
to get
realize what it takes to recreate
that. As
history.
I said, they gave me a 1820s and 1850s map.
Wow.
It had just little black squares where the houses were. It barely even said who owned the property, because these were people of color, and at the time they didn't count.
Yeah.
And so it was really a project to develop the place that they lived and develop these people so that they would be known by today's community.
Yeah. It's interesting. The Kent Historical Society
Sure.
is working very diligently to try to recreate the mill that Colonel Ludington owned and actually make it a working mill.
Aha.
Well, in those days, it probably cost a few $100s. Today it would be like $1 million
Sure.
to recreate what happened. Unfortunately, they restored the whole thing
Yeah.
in the 70s,
Yeah.
and someone burned it to the ground, and we lost everything.
I seem to remember that.
So they're
It's,
trying since the 70s to recreate. They've used some of the local stone to do what they had to do. They made some pilings, but it's going to take forever. So they are trying to do that. Now, what is this here?
This was done for the National Park Service, for actually St. Paul's Church in Mount Vernon. You can see the church poking up out of the tree line on the left-hand side of the artwork. It is actually 4th grade online curriculum depicting the food chain in the Hutchinson River during the 1830s.
I love your detail and color.
Thanks. Well, you have the resident fish that still live in the river, and the snapping turtle and the likes like that. You have the fish who come in for spawning, the striped bass. That's the big one on the left-hand side with its mouth open. And all of that becomes food for the top of the food chain, which is the great blue heron on the right, or the runaway slave who became the historic church, because that's now a national park, became the grave digger for the historic church, what's now the historic church, as the top of the food chain. And so...
Wonderful work.
Thank you.
Okay, West Point.
Oh, wow. This was done for the museum and the gift shop at West Point, because it is something that they offer in their gift shop. It's a bird's eye view of the most critical parts of West Point. You know, the military academy. It has the
What year?
currently.
Currently, wow.
Yes, yes. I even put in buildings that weren't completely built,
Wow. Is that right?
so that it would stay current.
Yeah. That's wow. How long does it take you to create something like that?
This one took months because there was constant changes being made.
You do it in watercolor?
This is, yes, I first start with a pencil sketch,
Wow.
which you show the client, and they go, yeah, they're going in the right direction. You know, we're set now.
Yeah.
Then I do a pen and ink, which again, they check to be sure that we've got all the details in, and then I paint it. I'm in the process right now of painting a painting for New York State, Fort Montgomery.
Fort Montgomery. Yeah.
Of a revolutionary battle, and that's the process exactly that we followed. Wow. The site manager gave me the information that he needed me to portray. Actually, I wound up photographing he and his 9-year-old son dressed in authentic clothes to use, because this painting depicts an 8-year-old boy who was part of the Battle of Fort Montgomery in 1777. And he's
1777, so that's when Fort Montgomery was taken over, right?
This is the battle that the British captured.
Yeah, they captured the fort at that time.
To
at the same time as Fort Clinton.
Well, exactly. It's a simultaneous attack.
Wow.
And the little boy actually was wounded in the head, and he is depicted in my artwork as escaping, while his father runs with his medical tools because his father was a surgeon's mate. In another direction, fortunately, they both do get away.
So you do the pencil sketches and the watercolors.
Oh yeah, yeah, the whole
It's
thing.
interesting because when we're going to keep that up there, please. But when I did Kiss the Candy Days Goodbye originally,
Yes.
I told them what I would like to see depicted on the cover.
Yes.
So they had someone do a pencil sketch. And I assumed that the person who did the pencil sketch was also going to do the color. So it was a picture of 3 children standing in a river on rocks. Their pants are rolled up, and this one boy is having a lifesaver because he has diabetes and he was having a reaction. So when I looked at the pencil drawing, I said, perfect. And then they colored it in, and the person who colored it in didn't realize they were in the river. So he has them kind of with their pants rolled up, but the river's gone because they never colored the river in. So it was interesting. And so I wondered if the person who did this
some of the pitfalls of
the
job.
So I wondered. So now this is a wonderful drawing. Tell me about that.
This is an officer of the 26th Regiment of Foot, Lomney Baldwin.
Oh.
Baldwin, you've heard of Baldwin
Yes,
apples?
sure did.
This
Yep.
is the guy who invented that apple.
Oh my goodness.
And this is one of the soldiers that participated in the Battle of Pell's Point in 1776
Now I
in
noticed
Pelham.
that his uniform is he has the yellow vest, right? Is that or no? Is that the trim of the jacket?
The jackets, the
Yep.
facings. He has a brown coat, buff facings.
Oh, okay.
Many people in the war had different color uniforms, depending upon the color cloth.
And they had
that was
significance.
available.
Each of those uniforms had significance.
Well, you would try to dress your entire regiment in the same colors.
things. Wow.
And the thing is, the following year, this is 1776. Next year, you could have an entirely different color uniform.
And this is Pell's Point?
Yes.
So this is Pelham.
Yes, it is.
I taught there for a number of years, 20
I
years.
lived there.
Is that right?
Yes.
Wow, yeah. I taught there for a number of years. It's a great place.
I talk and teach about that battle all the time because I still
now, there's a quite
work
different uniform.
with the national parks at St. Paul's, and that is more typical of what we, I suppose, think of when you think of a Continental soldier. Blue coat, red facings. In this case, it's the 2nd New York.
Wow.
And I can tell you for sure the following year they did have a different color code. You know, so
I don't know how they managed to even have uniformed uniforms in those days.
Well, they
it
didn't
had to be difficult
entirely.
Yeah.
You know, and it's really confusing. And I suppose, in fact, that you can understand why, you know, jumping through, you know, to Major Andre, the British spy,
Yep.
how he mistook, you know, the 3 guys who held him up as
yeah.
possibly being on the other side, because one of them was wearing the coat of
The British,
or actually I believe it was a Hessian.
Oh,
But but it gets confusing. And
one thing that I found amazing, when Tryon raided Danbury,
sure,
in the accounts,
yes,
they said that the uniforms that they were wearing
yeah,
were as if on parade, because all the different units had different colors. Some with skeleton heads and helmets, and the Hessians versus the British, and there were so many different uniforms that it was like a parade.
Well, having been part of that parade and dressed in my best uniform in 1977, I did help burn Danbury, and I wore a bearskin cap.
Oh, there you go.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I read those. I tried to get some of those descriptions in my book, but there were so many different uniforms.
And it meant something also.
Yeah, all the ones.
You know, I mean, if you wore a bearskin cap, that meant you were a grenadier or maybe a fusilier. You know, you talk about the skull and crossbones.
Yes,
That's was a dragoon of the 17th Light Dragoons.
Wow.
You know, so they had these distinctive pieces of art on them that you could recognize back in the day.
Could you imagine being a resident of Connecticut and having this group come by you and like, who are these people?
No, I'm really pleased that I have not had that kind of an experience.
Yeah, I mean, one of the stories.
The United States has been fortunately.
Yeah,
I mean, I suppose personally the closest that I can relate to would be the attack on the World Trade Centers. And
fortunately,
you know, losing
and Hawaii.
some friends. Well, but that's true. But I didn't know anybody in Hawaii personally.
Yeah.
So
I mean, fortunately, there haven't been a lot of times that we were attacked. But I can imagine that whole Connecticut affair was horrendous, because one of the stories that were going out is that the British were coming in to kill young boys who were going to grow up to be soldiers.
Well,
and I mean, suppose that's, I'm saying, how many stories must have gone on and how many things must have gone through their minds to see all this colorful.
Well, of course, you forgot the primary one. The Hessians are baby eaters, too.
Yeah,
So
it was another big story that scared the death out of all these people. Well, I hate to tell you this, but we're moving along awful quickly. Are there any photos that we have not seen yet? Nope, saw them all. One more, this one.
It's a typical way of my work gets used in publications.
So this is in a publication. Now, what is this publication?
This is the newsletter of the Brigade of the American Revolution, which is an organization dedicated to depicting and studying the life and times of the common people of the American Revolution.
And you've done more than one cover.
Oh, yes. You know, I've been a member
so
of
you
this
are the
organization
Norman Rockwell of the
45
Brigade of the
years.
American Revolution.
Well, maybe that's a thank you so much. You know, I have to say I'm following in a great artist's footsteps,
yes,
George
you are.
Woodbridge, who was a member of the brigade and did artwork for Mad Magazine and was a good friend and one of my mentors.
Well, John, I'm sure you and our audience can understand why one of the first things I said to you when I met you for the first time was, please come on the show.
Well, thank you, Vinny.
And I can't tell you how pleased we are to have you here. You are truly an American scholar. You are truly one of the people who have helped to bring the past to us. I've said it to you before. I've been quoted in several places for saying, if we do not teach the children of today about their yesterday, we are stealing some of the opportunity for their tomorrow.
That is true.
We need to know what came before us.
Absolutely.
And thank you for helping us to see that, to envision it, to know it. Thank you for all the hours and hours of research I'm sure you did, and all of the hours and hours of work you did to create the artwork that you do.
Thanks.
Website. Do we have his website on there? Want to see that one last time so that we know where to go to find out who
There I am.
you are, and there you are. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of us.
Thank you.
Come back. Come back
I'd love to.
anytime you want. We'd love to have you. I know there was so much more I wanted to ask you and know, and we'll find out.
No, you've got my phone.
I do. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this. Thank you for going one-on-one with the great John Wright.